and take that off. Uh, Someone lost their sound. So let's see. I have adequate sound coming out? Just make sure um, you've got. Let's see. I'm just going to check on. Yeah, I've been able to check and see that it is coming up on the Facebook and YouTube feed. Yeah. Oh, wow. Man, that is good and loud. So it sounds like it's working. I just tested it on YouTube. If it's not working for you, then maybe refresh the page. That's an important thing to do. Refresh the page so that you can see that all the things have tried connecting the way they're supposed to. Anyhow, Colossians chapter 3, we've just come through a section that talked about putting on, what we put on. So, and it was a very positive section here at the latter end of chapter 3, where you're putting on humility, meekness, patience, bearing with one another, forgiving each other, putting on the love of Christ. And in so doing, you let Christ dwell within you in a way that allows Christ to reach out through you to the people in your life. And one barrier to that is a concept of resentment, of um, of of seeing that the world, the things of this world, has got you down, has you by the tail, and it won't let go. And if you persist in seeing that as the whole encompassment of your life, then the natural byproduct of singing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, being able to sing in life is driven away because you're so focused on what the world around you is doing that you miss so much. When I was growing up, I may have talked about this. We watched Anne of Green Gables. If you haven't seen this series, it's wonderful. Anne of Green Gables, and even as a guy, what struck me in watching those three films was that this was a very creative person, and I identified with that a whole lot. A very creative person, enjoyed that attitude, and when she came into the town, first adopted, and the story is an orphan girl adopted by a couple on Prince Edward Island in Nova Scotia, Canada, and so she finally gets adopted. She's driving on the way home, and she was imagining things, you're making up stories about various landscape things, and she said, have you ever noticed how the light glistens off the ripples of the pond? She's saying this to him, and the response is, no, I've never noticed those things. And she would just say, how much you miss. Uh, because in her world, she just saw wonder in so many things, saw just wonder everywhere around her in life, and she lamented that so many were not appreciating the wonder that she experienced. That was a tough thing there. So we, in focusing on the negative, now, I'm not saying there aren't negative things. I'm not saying there aren't problems. I'm not saying there aren't things that we should react to. I'm just saying that with the modern news media and everything, there is so many things to see as negative in this world, you could easily get lost in it. Even in your own world, if you just look right around you, if you come to relationships expecting there to be negative things and always on high alert for those negative things, you will find them. You will find the failings of your fellow human beings, and it will always disappoint you. And if you continue to look for that, you're going to ignore the good, and you're going to get bogged down in the bad, and the relationship will suffer as a result. So, we're coming into looking at three particular relationships that are mentioned here in this, between chapter 3, verse 18, and chapter 4, verse 1. In those short verses, three areas of relationship that I think we all go through. We all have gone through. Unless you're very young and watching this, you've probably been through that. It reminds me, I was going to here, there, and I wanted to, yes, go to this. Oh, okay. Jeff has lost sound. Just okay. You're very young. Okay, yeah. Jeff is saying that. Okay, all right. So just wanted to make sure that I wasn't I wasn't the only one worried that the sound wasn't going out. So just gonna pump that out there. All right. So 3 relationships: husband and wife. The relationship of and it's particular here in this passage, child to father, and employee or servant to master, to boss, that kind of relationship. And those are key, very important things that we experience in life, and they take up the vast majority of our life. Now, what's not listed here is friend relationships, neighbors, things like that. But there are aspects of this that apply even to that. But what's key here about these particular relationships and what makes them such a hard spot for so many people is because there's a power dynamic at work in each of the 3 of them. So it's not just relationships in general. There are relationships that we choose, and there are relationships that choose us, or we are somewhat boxed into, somewhat tied to. And so we're going to go through each of those 3 here together. So let me see here. We're on schedule time-wise. Good deal. First, in verse 18, it says, "Wives, submit to your husbands, as is fitting in the Lord. Husbands, love your wives, and do not be harsh with them." We take those first 2 verses, verse 18 and verse 19, and look at the dynamic that is between a wife and a husband. And he says different things to both because there is a power dynamic. It is far less pronounced these days, and the power in the relationship is at least in a legal sense far more balanced, but not in but in the sense of responsibility and role, that doesn't change where God is concerned. And so he looks at the situation and he prescribes or gives advice on how to make this working relationship with its own power dynamic work. How is it going to work? Wives, submit to your husbands. Now, a parallel to this would be in Ephesians chapter 5, where it says, "Wives, respect your husbands," and there's that connection of, all right, a wife respecting a husband. Now, what he's getting at here is not to say that this is the totality of the relationship. He's saying this is a specific need. Women prior to Christianity had almost no rule, no role, no voice. There was horrible things done by uncaring men to women as they saw them as merely an asset in their life. It was a terrible thing. Christ came in, and as we saw earlier in the book of Colossians, we saw the leveling to say that there is now no more these distinctions in Christ. They are of equal value, and so even just raising the value of a woman to a man as equal was a huge step forward for what Christianity brought. And even if you go back into the Old Testament, what Judaism brought over against what the pagan cultures of the day labeled them as. Now, you can point to all kinds of archaeological things that showed women in high places of temples and things like that. But those were icons, and again, they were being used by men as they constructed those things. So he's coming here and he's saying he's pointing out the need. And so with women at this time, there was a great freeing that came as a result of the church. And like anybody, you turn someone loose on a pasture, you finally set them free, and there's a lot of testing what the boundaries are, what the relationship is, and so he was seeing a need where women said, well, now that my value is this as opposed to what it was, I no longer have to respect you. I no longer have to see the government of our household as someone having a role of being in charge. And this comes down to the nub of things that, like it or not, men have a responsibility in the home. Not a role, not a privilege, not even a greater capacity. None of those things are what the Bible describes that, but more he's describing that men have a responsibility to be a leader in their home. And that's not to say they're better per se, but that they have a responsibility, and they can walk away from that responsibility, and and it cannot be filled by any other person. Only the man that God has placed in that home can fill that responsibility, and it's a terrible thing. We see it in this society. You cannot make one thing that equal to another, the same as another thing, particularly between men and women. And we see fatherlessness as an epidemic in this country and around the world as men walk away from family. And as a result, we see this crumbling infrastructure of the nuclear family across our world and its attendant effects. All of the things, all of the chaos that we see in so many aspects of our world stem from the breakdown of the family. I was just seeing a quote this week, and I'm blanking on where it came from, but nations are built on the family. The strength of that's it. The strength of the family determines the strength of a nation. And the more we trade in for momentary pleasure and ideals, the structure of the nuclear family, we play with it at our own peril as it crumbles the society around us. It's a terrible thing to lose a dad. It's a terrible thing to lose a mom, but there's a solidness that comes, and there's something that children, young and old, hunger to know, and that is to know their dad. So, wives, submit to your husbands as is fitting in the Lord, and that's a good qualifier right there. As is fitting in the Lord. He's not asking them to do things that are wrong. He's not asking them to do things that are against what God commands. He's just saying, show respect. Show respect, because that is something that a man needs to know, that he has cohesiveness in his family and to be able to lead it. Now, it's not making that statement without talking to the husbands. This is not an unbalanced argument. Husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. Obviously, husbands, in seeing this newfound equality of value, could be a situation where men accustomed to a different cultural set of rules, particularly as Gentiles were coming into the mix, could wind up being harsh with their wives. And he is explicitly saying, no, you come to this situation, you come to this power dynamic. And that's the unique thing about the marriage relationship, is that there is power on both sides. Now, we may have said legally women had less power in how they were able to navigate life, but there's tremendous power in a woman over a man at any point. Um, but this newfound balancing of the legal aspect might have drawn some men into adversarial role with their wives. And Paul is writing here, and he's saying, look at the work of doing a marriage in terms of love, in terms of serving, not her. You're not serving her, you're serving God. And we're going to get down to that in these power relationships, there is the challenge to remember who's in charge, who is ultimately in power. It's not your spouse. It's not your parents. It's not your boss. It's not, those are not the ultimate power in your life. The ultimate power rests with God. And so as much as any of those individuals frustrate you, there is a service that you can do to them knowing that you are appreciated and that you are taken care of by the ultimate boss. Have you ever been in a situation where you had an immediate supervisor who was, for lack of a better term, um, unqualified for their position, unreasonable in their demands, selfish, in any number of things, any number of aspects of that. But you knew that the boss above them was absolutely fair, was absolutely got your back, knew where you were, and had you on track for all the appropriate recognition for what you were going through and what you were doing. That work situation, though you would like to have your immediate boss, your immediate person over you change, you can rest in the knowledge of knowing that the ultimate boss was on the right track and was taking care of you. In our, modern society of changing, we can change a lot of things in life. But even if you were trapped in that situation, it would be a tremendous comfort. And you might not get so focused in on the petty things, the things that are small. Because even small things, they can add up in your mind to huge, insurmountable things. But if they stayed small and you saw them individually and you saw that the ultimate rewards were still there, the ultimate recognition is still there, the ultimate love and appreciation is still there from the ultimate boss, it changes the relationship dynamic completely. All right, so I knew I was going to spend quite a bit of time there on husbands and wives. I want to look at real briefly parents and children and workers and masters, and then we'll go to the discussion, bring in the other folks with us in just a minute here. So, verse 20 says, "Children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord." And then the counterbalance, "Fathers, do not provoke your children, lest they become discouraged." Children and fathers. Children, obey your parents in everything. This is a tough one. I mean, at what point is someone not a child in relation to their father? When does that end? And what is the scope of that? What if it gets in the way of what your plans are? I mean, if you're nowadays we say 18 is the line of demarcation between being a child and being an adult. But there are many 18-year-olds who are quite competent, and maybe in some ways more mature than their own parents. At the same time, there are 25 and 30-year-olds who are nowhere near ready to function as an adult, and that's a concern to many parents. Sometimes parents give advice or jobs and things to kids, and they react to that because they see another child in the neighborhood, a friend or something like that, who doesn't have to do the same thing, or even among siblings. So I have 7 kids myself, and I get this all the time that the way I'll treat one child will be different than another based on their need. All they can see is all right, this one has these chores, and when I was their age, I either did or did not have those particular chores or those particular consequences, because often the consequences are different for each child, given even though the same crime has been committed, the consequences may be different, and that results from knowing the child, knowing what they value and how they process information and how they process the learning to respond to consequences, knowing those individual things about each child, applying the right consequences for their actions um, is unique to each one. And so I would do that, and sometimes the kids complain because it's different. But in the same fashion, this letter is being read to the church at Colossae and many other churches, and Paul is saying, "Children, obey your parents in everything, in everything, for this pleases the Lord." For this pleases the Lord, and He wants them to be pleased with what they're doing and in living with the. Hi, you want to come in and be a part of the study? Hey, there's Timothy here. I was just talking about my kids and everything. So yeah, come on around here, sit down. You're gonna be on. You'll be famous, huh? What? Huh? Oh, he needs to ask a question. Well, you're gonna have to call mom. Go for it. So I'm a little busy right here. I'm in the middle of a Bible study. So, and I'm talking about children obey your parents. So there you go. All right, parents. So fathers, specifically, fathers, do not provoke your children lest they become discouraged. And so this is just an invitation. Parents, don't go overboard. You have this command for children to be obedient. Yes, don't take advantage of that. And I think there are parents in this world who get short-sighted, and they only think of their own comfort, and they only think of just what's immediate to get the kids out of my hair and off my plate. I'm not saying that's anybody watching this, but there could be, and honestly, there are times when I'm dog tired and I'm like, yeah, go watch a movie or whatever, do whatever. But that's should be the rare exception for us. And to take advantage of an obedient spirit would also be a provoking thing to do, to say, to lay on extra chores and extra responsibilities, and to box a child in so that they don't get the training and the experiences that they need to live effectively in life. Those are also things that would be very discouraging to a kid, having gone through that. And you don't want to do that. And so he's making a balanced thing there. And so the kids are looking at the parents. They need to see that ultimately their father is Christ. That ultimately God is the one training them. The parents need to be looking at the kid, looking at the job of parenting as Christ is the ultimate parent over them. They never stop being God's child. They never stop having to lean on the wisdom of God to bring that to these kids. And so that's an important way that we need to be looking at the parent-child relationship. But that God is over and above both those things. When I pray with my kids at night, often I say with them and in front of them, God, help me to be the parent that I should be. And where I am lacking, Lord, you be the parent. You be the guide. You be the comforter. You be the one that shares wisdom when I'm not there. When I fail. When I am human, leaning on my humanness, and I ask God to fill in those gaps. And that's a wonderful comfort. Nobody's asking you to be a perfect parent. But they are. I do ask you, and what these verses are asking you is to let God parent through you and ask God to parent where you can't be. Okay, last one, and I'm going to read before and after a little bit of a little section here. It says, um, verse 22. It says, "Bondservants." This is chapter 3, verse 22. Bondservants, obey in everything those who are your earthly masters, not by way of eye service as people pleasers, but with sincerity of heart, fearing the Lord. It is very detailed on this one here. And so, because the movement to equality of wives coming up to husbands, of children to parents, in terms of equality of value, okay? Equality of value happening. Um, uh, there was a change in the dynamic of the power relationship. But the change in dynamic of those was small in comparison to the change in dynamic between a servant and a master. Um, and there were several kinds of servant relationships going on here. So at the very bottom, you would have those who were, say, a foreign slave, someone totally out of context of culture and upbringing, operating as a slave, entirely dependent on a master who would use them to get whatever labor out of them or so forth, having paid a price for them. That relationship was vastly different. Um, Other relationships were like indentured servants, someone who would, and then this happened very commonly in the trades, where someone would want to learn a trade, be it butcher, cobbler, um, silversmith, goldsmith, carpenter, all those things would be something that a parent would bring their child to and would basically say, "We'll bring this guy, this child, food while they work with you and learn your trade." And this was an exchange, and so there was a big power dynamic, not quite as much as slave, but a big power dynamic at play there, where this young person would be uh, taken advantage for every menial task or every undesirable thing. You would withhold knowledge for a time, not letting them learn the secrets of the trade for a period of time before letting them come closer and closer to where they would eventually become a peer. Um, and that relationship was a difficult one to navigate, and one that you could really take advantage of a fellow human being through. On the other hand, there were very good masters, and that comes more like to what we're talking about today with an employer and employee. We have a lot of employee rights. Um, and we have a lot of mobility in our ability to find other employers, should we desire to do so. And so a lot of that has changed. But when you're in a working relationship with someone who is either by common agreement or by just the constraints of life able to direct your work, that sets up a difficult ability to communicate, difficult ability to see each other as peers. And what he writes here, because he's going to talk to the masters, I'll go ahead and skip to 4:1 and read that part. Masters, treat your bondservants justly and fairly, knowing that you also have a master in heaven. Between those two things, both the call for the servant to be obedient and the master to be fair and just, between those two things, we have verse 24, which says, and this goes on from talking about how the servant should work as unto the Lord, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. For the wrongdoer will be paid back for his wrong that he has done, and there is no partiality. And so the vastness of the change sets up a situation where there would be an opportunity to express long pent up frustration and anger. And what he's saying here is no, you still have the relationship of doing your work as unto the Lord. It is not becoming a Christian and seeing that your immortal soul is of equal value for every single person. That change does not change the fact that what you do is a witness to all the people that you work with. And so, is that for me? What am I supposed to do with that? Timothy just brought me ice cream. Well, I'm not going to eat it on camera. Why don't you put it in the freezer over there? Thank you. Uh-huh. All right. So we've had a good time going through each of these three things. I'm going to bring on the discussion group, and we're going to get those guys in here in just a second. So let me fire up Zoom and get my headphones on. And we'll get those folks in here. Let's see. Oh, that's backwards. There we go. Funny thing, the deans are actually in, where are they? They are in, they're camping down a ways. And so they'll be joining us from their camping area. There we go. And I'm going to go to the Zoom discussions. Boom. And I'm going to turn myself off here. Hide self view. Okay. So we got Jeff. We'll see if we can get Bob. Oh, there they are. There's Bob and Cheryl. No, that was me. That was me. Yes. There they are. Okay. You found a different place to park. Fantastic. Okay. Yeah, he had that. Okay. All right. And you're down by Astoria on the Oregon side. Okay. All right. Fort what? Fort Stevens. Okay. Cool. Gotcha. Gotcha fine. So sounds good on my end? Okay. Excellent. Okay. All right. So we've been talking about relationships, husband and wife, father and children, and servant and master. Those three things. As we're getting into this, just a second here, I want to mention to the audience that we have. And we'll keep track of those. All right. Oh. Oh, okay. Yeah. Looks like we have 25% on Abysmal, 25% on number 2, and then 3 is skipped. So there's not a middle of the road vote here. And then we we have a 4 and a 5. So yeah, pretty definite opinions on those. So yeah, that I would have thought we might have had a spike on one of the others, but it's pretty well spread out. Cool. All right, let's talk about marriage. You guys, deans, you've been married how long? I'm forgetting. A long time. Yes, and I'm 45. Yes, that is amazing. Wow, 42 years. And Jeff, you have been married, correct? Okay, so you have some experience in this arena. Okay. What do you what do you think of this statement here? Wives submit to your husbands, and husbands love your wives. Is that something that husbands and wives need to know? Mm-hmm. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Hmm. Yes. Test. Test. Wow. Go ahead and keep talking. I'm trying to get the audio working for you guys. For some reason, we've got a technical difficulty going here, so I am.
We're having to use the phone as as the hotspot. I'm not sure,
Nope,
but
no, it's on my end, and I think
okay.
I've got it solved here.
Okay.
So let me try this.
But what
Yeah,
I
it
think
seems.
is great about the husband wife dynamic is that we come with different perspectives. So if we had things going on with the children because of the day to day that I was closer to them in in proximity, that I know what the different moods are with the different ones, and I could say, Bob, this one had a particularly rough day at school today, so I just want to give you a heads up about that. So when we're interacting, that you would have that knowledge. You know,
Yeah,
It is interesting, like you had mentioned with the 7 kids, you do end up treating them somewhat differently because they have different needs at different
time.
times, and that's what
yeah,
Cheryl helped me with. But I also find that one of our kids just seemed to skate along in life, and I probably didn't give him enough attention because I thought he was fine. So
Hmm.
it's a fascinating
Okay.
thing to look back on.
Did
Yeah.
that work out?
Yeah,
The
oh,
one you thought
absolutely.
was fine was actually fine?
Yeah, but I probably was less attentive than I should have been.
Hmm.
It was interesting because my mother would sense some insecurities in this particular son that I didn't see. All I saw was confidence. And so it's
Right.
fascinating to me the information that other people can bring you about your kids that you don't necessarily see directly yourself. He was
Yeah.
such a fine athlete and things that I just that's what I saw as
Yeah.
opposed to areas of vulnerability that I didn't notice.
Wow.
Mhm.
Parenting's challenging.
It is.
Yeah.
Each one is so different. So I find that fascinating.
Yeah. There is there, and so I'm just you paint and I'm not saying it's false or anyway, a wonderful picture. But there are so many in our society who don't get that outcome.
Oh, I know.
So Cheryl, one of the things you shared was like from the get go, you would not have married somebody if they weren't the type that would go to God, that showed that kind of initiative, and that gave you the confidence that this was the right way. So many people come into marriage for many other different reasons, and don't consider the spiritual aspect. That's one thing I do in premarital counseling. Is I go, guys, I'm not going to. I'm not, I don't do marital counseling for people who are of different beliefs, Christian
Right.
versus non-Christian, and that's not to say that I'm against them getting married. I'm just saying, guys, at the very basis of your belief about the world, one of you believes that there is a God and that he is a loving savior who is involved in your life every day and real, and the other believes that everything is materialistic and is generated.
We lost your sound there. We lost sound.
He picked that up. He's going.
We're back.
Now.
Back.
Okay.
We're back.
Well, you can hear me?
I can hear you, Jeff. We lost Locke.
I think it's at Mission Central at the moment.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because he looks like he just moved his lips.
He's aware that we can't hear him, or he can't hear us.
Yes, I've come to recognize that look in him.
Yeah.
And he can hear us. He can hear us.
He can hear us, yes, but we can't
hear him. Yeah.
So, the voiceless leader.
Battery. It's a battery change.
It's a battery issue.
Okay.
Okay.
So
all things come to failure without the proper battery.
Yeah.
Okay. So how about work life and
Testing.
employers?
There we
There
go.
he is. Now we can hear you.
All right. Yeah, you were going to move on to work life. Great.
Yes, work life and employers. Mm-hmm.
But I would
Definitely.
just like, before we do really quick,
But
I just want to support you guys. I'm in awe about how long you've been married. It would be a goal. It was a goal that I had that never got realized. That kind of really long-term relationship where you can't help but really get to know each other and work together and all these things. And but I never had the availability of a faith like mine is based in. I've come to base mine in, and the wisdom and the guidance of the Lord behind it to enter into a relationship. I wish I could go back, and I've actually had that thought at times. It's like, boy, it would have been much better if I was armed with that wisdom back in.
Yeah, we were both fortunate in that, our parents, of course, when we married, they hadn't been married as long as we have, but they eventually were both married over 60 years. So, we were fortunate in that was modeled to us. Not everybody gets that. We had a guest last summer who chatted with us. I had known him for 40 years, and he said, I didn't know what love was supposed to be like. No one had ever modeled it for me. And this friend of mine made this statement and just stunned me. And I just had never thought about how fortunate both of us had been to have parents that modeled a relationship that we then expected to have. So we were, I'm not sure how much credit we get. I think we had a lot of guidance, both from, heavenly guidance and parental guidance.
But there are times in life when there are real challenges and crises, to mutually go together and be dependent on the Lord. It really draws you closer together. I feel.
Well, it's the highest relationship you're in, and it's all modeled down from that point, and I like the word modeling. You get to see it,
Mm-hmm.
you get to see it lived out. You see powerful figures, which are your parents, who are going to our powerful and seeking guidance in all matters that concern the entire family, not just the two.
Yeah.
The comforting thing for me, Jeff, and you mentioned it, is when you find that there's a plumb line to follow.
Yes.
It is so reassuring to know that there's someone at the tiller other than you. I love the saying, the Lord didn't say there wouldn't be any storms. He said he'd be with you in the boat during the storm. And
Yeah.
I just find that hugely comforting. Always have.
Amazing.
Well, just think how much of a burden it is, or how challenging it is, that every time you would meet up against a problem or of some kind. Without that, you've
Right.
got to reinvent it every time, and the whole weight ends up feeling like it's on you. I gotta make it up. I gotta make the decision. I have to invent something, rather than, this has already been covered. I don't have to do that.
And yes, to know that we're both works in progress, that we know that the Lord is working on certain things
Always.
with each of us individually. And I know that Bob prays for me in the areas of my weakness. I pray for him.
You have areas of weakness?
Yes, I do.
No.
What an insight.
Say it ain't so.
Yeah.
So that's always very helpful prayer support.
Jeff, what context would you would apply that as? I mean, obviously it goes in any context, knowing that there is a pattern already laid down. It helps, but what situation in life do you see that best applied, that it would be helpful to know?
I'm maybe I'm not understanding your question, or maybe I'm making it too global. So
you said reinventing. What is the next step to do? And if I understand what you're saying correctly, you're saying that the onus of coming up with the moral and correct step, be it in marriage relationships, parenting, or work relationships, having to self-determine the morality of the situation is difficult if you, instead of going to a standardized, going to what you are designed to be, what we find in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying that is a huge help to have it already covered, as you said.
Well, the guidance.
The guidance that's there.
The guidance is already pointed out. So I guess it seems really, I've learned that this is a very potent guidance, but it isn't something I would have intuitively gone to before, but it has been laid in now, which is, when in doubt, pray.
Mm-hmm.
And in prayer, you're asking for advice, your guidance. Yeah.
Exactly. Instead of me sitting down going, I got to figure this out.
Right.
It all starts with praying. And at that point, it will lead out from there. And if you ask, you will receive. And so if there's anything that requires guidance, it's a relationship.
Yes.
Thankfully,
yes.
It is about relationships and communication.
And which of these three, marriage, parenting, work, do you see that would be what pulls that up most in your mind, where that would be helpful?
Oh, definitely in marriage and raising kids. I mean, it's the closeness of it, and all the tensions, and every moment. Of course, I'm speaking from a distance from these guys, but every time you open the door, walk in the house, and go, I'm home, it's a brand new thing. You don't know, really, moment by moment. So it's I would find it very reassuring to know there's always some place I can go and sit down and ask for guidance, and a guidance that I can trust.
Yes.
And prayer is such an encouraging thing. Cheryl had an aunt that I never met.
Yes.
But she called us once many years ago, just to tell us she was praying for us. Now, I had never met this lady before, and I'm on the phone with her, and she's telling me how regularly she prays for us. That's incredibly encouraging.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
they talk about the jars of clay holding prayers in heaven. We have no idea the people that lift us up and provide us provision and protection through their
Hmm.
prayers for us. I find it immensely encouraging.
Yeah.
And not only do we receive guidance, as you said, Jeff, through word and prayer, but we are also being covered by other Christians who we come to their mind, and for whatever reason, they're kind enough to lift us up. So I just find that extraordinary, and I find it very, very enriching and encouraging.
And another thing is sometimes there are relationships in extended families or in work relationships that are just prickly, and you find, or troubling, or they're
Yeah.
difficult. They're
Yeah. Right.
challenging. And I find that the more often that you pray for the person that's a challenge,
Okay.
that
Right.
you start observing them more. I just keep asking the Lord, help me to see this person through your eyes, and what can I do, or what can I say that would be helpful in getting the relationship stronger.
Right.
And he does. He gives you insight in what to do or say in response to the prayers. And it's hard to be angry with someone if you're actively praying.
That's true.
It would be difficult, yes.
Yes.
I would
And
find it. Yeah.
and that goes to what this whole section is about, of seeing the work of relating as a spouse, the work of parenting, the work of being a child, the work of boss or servant, either one. You're looking at the person not from the standpoint of I'm trying to get for me in this relationship, but this is the work that God has given me to do. So going to God for advice on how to do that work is a natural byproduct. And that as Jeff says, that changes the dynamic, because you go, I'm not the final word here. There's one who can give me advice.
Right.
The fascinating thing about that is, as a young married husband, I wanted to be everything to Cheryl. Well, as you age and time goes by, you're awfully grateful you don't have to be everything, because you can't be everything.
No.
You can't possibly
No.
be everything. And it's such a relief to realize that you have a role to provide. You're to love your wife like Christ loved the church, but
Right.
but the Lord is the primary person that she looks to. I'm the secondary person who has the privilege of traveling through life with her at this time. So
Right. Yeah. And you can love her knowing that Christ fills in the gaps.
Yeah.
Like you pray with your children.
Right.
Fill in gaps, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, he does. He fills in the gaps of parenting as well. And that's I look at younger couples who they look out at a world, and they see the divorce rate, and they see the broken homes. Maybe they come from a broken home, and a lot of young people are avoiding either getting married or avoiding having kids because of the uncertainty of how this thing is going to turn out.
Right.
And in doing so, and that stems from the idea that my own human ability is what's got to get me through this relationship, and it's false, and it's short-sighted, and it is basically saying, God, I don't need you, or I'll put a finer point on that. God, I don't really see that you can do a lot. It's just humans just break down. When I think, if we took your perspective, Bob and Cheryl, of making Christ a partner in the marriage, one who is advising and growing each person, because I firmly believe that the process of marriage is something God designed to alter human beings, to grow them in a way that they would never naturally do.
Exactly.
No,
I second
no.
that.
Yes. Yes.
You would never naturally go from fighting over your Legos to um, surrendering to the bathroom protocols of seat up and seat down, right?
Right.
I'm going to defer to the other in this regard. That you would never mature through that phase if you did not have that. And children just they expand your mind to take care of a larger group rather than saying, well, uh, everybody can fend for themselves. You actually get a concept of what it means to raise another human being from infancy to adulthood.
Parenting's
Yeah,
extraordinary. Yeah.
yes, it is.
And it's so involved and so complex. But since I have not been at being married anywhere near your length of time in my past or immediate, but I can think back in my Christian walk, which there's things that are still quite available. This whole idea of feeling I am responsible to come up with all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
It's really wearing. And then I go, just think of, I have a wife and I have kids.
Uh-huh.
To do that on your own could take away, without having the Lord to go to, could take away a lot of your enjoyment of that process, because it would be, in my view, it could, because it's just so, it could be overwhelming, I would think.
Sure.
Yeah, and we all do meet extraordinary people that seem to be able to do that on their own strength, but we weren't two of them, Cheryl and I. So
yeah,
right. It's not without precedent that people who don't know God raise well-adjusted children, but I think there is those instances, and where we see that happening, you see a cultural input that is around those individuals, because you're basically saying, go with the drift of society, whatever that is, and they're kind of laying back on the stream of culture when they're doing that, when they've basically adapted to or taken on the characteristics of the culture, and that's in agreement with everything that's around them, and so you can just let the kid go with the drift there. I think that's different, and I think that's especially different today in raising kids, because the flow of culture is so opposite or perpendicular or in the opposite direction as the flow of faith in Jesus Christ. Yeah, it's entirely different. All right, work relationships, and we have a range of working relationships here in our group here, and I'm curious with the those watching, what your experience is on work relationships and how they function, and there are bad work relationships, bad ones where you really have to go to God to continue in the serving capacity. You guys ever been in one of those?
Well,
I must have been. I just know I
Okay.
must have been. I mean, then it becomes a question of which one. I don't know. It's just been, I've been away from that whole setting for,
yeah,
for 13, 14 years now. And
yeah.
And
back
so
when I worked for a corporation, it seemed like the bosses had very different management styles.
Mm-hmm.
Some were very hands-on and micromanaged, and others were very, liberated you to do the work as you saw fit, as long as you met certain deadlines and certain, metrics. So it was very different, and trying to adapt between those different ones was a challenge.
Cheryl was a chemical engineer for Boeing, and
right.
Back in those days, if I came home and she was pounding bread on the counter, she had an especially bad day. She was making bread just so she could hit it.
Thankfully, there was bread.
Yeah.
Yeah, something to hit rather than you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
okay.
I had watched my father in a corporate structure. He worked for Boeing for 44 years, and Boeing was
Ah,
very good to us. But watching the struggles that
Boeing
he
is
went
good to us.
with different bosses is one of the
mhm.
reasons I chose autonomy. I chose to work in a
Ah,
field where I was I
you're the
owned my own
boss.
business,
Sure.
and I answered to the customers, but not to a direct boss. And
Mhm.
that was very deliberate on my part. And after watching my dad struggle with 44 years of sometimes really good bosses that believed in him, and sometimes bosses that just held him back.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So, just to um, try to find us two different experiences, Jeff, when you were dealing with um, a difficult boss, were you a Christian at that time?
No,
Okay.
I
So
believe,
I'd like,
but I
I,
was not a Christian, and I don't know if that makes sense, but I just want.
yeah. Well, I'd like to hear what the difference is in maybe how you dealt with that as a non-Christian and how Cheryl dealt with her situation as a Christian, and describe the differences. What went on there?
That's a that's an. Please go ahead while I think of
Okay.
a response. I'm like, wow.
I was very fortunate because during the lunch hours, we would have Bible studies. Certain believers
those
in
were
the
allowed
area,
then.
they were allowed then. I don't
Oh, right.
think so. But anyway, we would actively pray for one another, and the Lord seemed to have, like one time I went into a boss's office and I came back out, I was really given the what for, and
Oh.
I came back out and there was this man that I knew from my church, who just happened to be walking by, and he gave me such encouragement. So it just
Hmm.
seems like at times when I was needy, God had somebody there for me,
Hmm.
which I thought was fascinating. And when I first, as a young female engineer working with all men, it was very interesting that they treated me like a father figure. They took me under their wing. God provided this amazing work group where
Hmm.
they taught me the ropes, sort of like a
Yeah.
father figure, and
Right.
they protected me in meetings
Uh
until
huh.
I felt, like I'm confident enough where I could, be myself.
Stand on your own. Yeah. Okay.
And mm-hmm.
So I'm curious about that moment where a fellow believer in the workplace comes by and encourages you. What feelings were you feeling before that conversation? What
I
would
was
you
well because I was given a pretty rough review over a work product that I had just submitted.
Uh-huh.
I was pretty devastated, but I tried very hard not to show any emotions whatsoever.
Right.
But I go walk outside of the office and I see this man that I knew from my church. And I think he could tell, even though I was doing a pretty good acting job, that
Mm-hmm.
something was bothering me. And he said, "Do you have a
Yeah.
minute?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, let's go over here and let's talk for a minute."
Yeah.
He just seemed to know, maybe the Lord told him, that I needed
Uh,
encouragement that day, and he was in the right
yeah.
place at the right time and exactly when I needed it. And this
S-
happened, you know,
And the fascinating thing about that to me is you don't have to quote scripture when
no,
you do that. You don't
no,
have
Okay.
to give
No.
a sermon. You need to be there, Christ-like, if you will,
Yeah.
through kindness and
compassion.
compassion and consideration
Sure.
uh, it's witnessing, right? You
Yeah.
witness to the person when they need it,
And it made
and
such a difference.
she's actually
So
mentioned this story for 40 years. So
And
um,
okay.
it was just
Well, it's illustrative
a
of the whole thing.
clip. Yes.
Yeah. Well.
and but I guess my point in that is thinking from the point of view of the encourager. He has
Mhm.
no idea the effect he had on Cheryl's life, but
Mm-hmm.
I'll
Yeah.
bet you he did that dozens of times for different people during his career. So
Sure.
within our work, we have the opportunity to do this, both as the understudy and as if you're over people.
Okay.
And I think that's an extraordinarily valuable thing. So it's a
So what?
privilege.
I mean, there are people with that gift of encouraging.
Yes,
They
there
know
are.
how to lift people up.
But
But what it sounds like in this situation, you came out of that meeting with a question as to your worth, because
my
this
worth.
person had basically said you didn't do a good job. And along came somebody. God put them there. The conversation, and they were able to give you perspective on your worth. Not only
Exactly.
not only to say God's got this, God values you. God values you enough to place in your path someone who has a gift of encouragement to say those words. That moves the bubble of all that you're focusing on far and away from that boss or that work product or that reprimand or whatever. It moves the view way back from that, and now you're looking at God values my work. God values me.
Right. Right. My value as an individual, my value as an employee is not
Yeah.
based on my performance, but on
Yeah.
the price that Christ paid for me.
Wow. And that changes your actions going forward from there, because you could if that person hadn't been there and you had stayed in that mindset of I'm not valued, then you go, what's the point of working in this? What's the point of investing all this? It's all I don't want to work for that boss, and so I'm going to undermine them or say bad things about it. Those are all reactions that employees choose to take, but that was relieved
Right.
from you. Okay,
Cheryl
Jeff,
also had. Excuse me. Go ahead.
I was just going to switch to Jeff, but if you had something on that last one there, go for it.
Okay, I'll try and remember. I forget things.
I was just going to say, Cheryl has the amazing ability also, though, to say, you don't know the type of day that person's had. The one that
Right.
trotted over you don't know what prompted that. Were you just the last straw? She was really good with our kids of saying, don't jump to conclusions. You don't know the day they had. You don't know what caused their outburst.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give it more significance than it deserves. Cheryl's amazing at giving people, I don't know, is that called the benefit of the doubt? Maybe that's the wrong term. The understanding that might have just been the trigger, probably wasn't the cause of their eruption.
Sure. Yeah.
Sorry, Jeff. Jumped on you there.
All right. No, people should be able to complete their thoughts while they're there. But
before they're gone.
But I'm listening to you guys, and I'm trying to find an answer, something that I can contribute, and that fits along that line. But then I go, well, the big difference, and I think that's where you were going to start with, Locke. The big difference for me was I was not in a position to be receiving perceptive, noticing God's activity in my life all the time, unlike I am in a position now. I mean, it was like, even I'm fairly convinced he was pretty active in my life back then.
Yeah.
Of course.
Acknowledge it,
Yeah, but
of course he was.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. I mean, all roads lead to this moment, using Zoom and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I didn't. So when I look back, I go, that's what was missing, was that an aspect of that where I knew I wasn't alone. I knew I didn't have to carry the whole weight. I knew that I could seek, and I could go. There was someone definitely I could go and seek an answer to, or just some support from, or I need some patience right now so that I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I had some high pressure kinds of jobs. I was always, my relationships with people at work were for the most part okay. The few times they weren't, I knew how to solve that.
You sound like you've always been affable and reasonable.
Yeah, I bet you have.
Yeah.
You're that kind of person. You don't strike me as a volatile person.
No, I've not been volatile, but I have run large groups of people before. And
Sure.
you can only go so far with affability when you have like 20 some staff members, 5 or 6
Yeah.
volunteers, and 36 substance abusers all cooped up together for 28 days. I mean, if you're too affable, they own you, and it's
Oh, right. Yeah.
yes. And the same is true for my second career, which is global data networks and making sure that all functions well. I mean, somebody's always got a problem. So the big thing was not being aware of how God was working at any particular time. The evidence I wasn't receiving the evidence that was probably very much there at that time.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful, very much so, that it's all through my life now. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate that sense of not being alone with all this stuff. But if there was a relationship problem I had with work or at work, it was my relationship with work. I put too much into it.
Oh,
I
workaholic
put too much
kind of
into
thing.
it. Probably. That would be a word that
Uh-huh.
crossed my mind before. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that really dials back to self-worth. You know, the workaholic or the perfectionist is finding self-worth in the affirmation of doing a good job.
Mhm.
Not that, I mean, yes, we should do a good job. We should work heartily as we should work as unto the Lord. That's right here before us. But it's not even. I mean, because at the end of the day, you retire and you're lucky if you get a gold watch, and then they throw your files out the window, and
Gotta go.
Yeah.
you know, there's no monument built to Jeff at whatever company he worked for. You know, it's unless
Probably not.
No.
Well, there's probably still some code out there that has my name on it.
yeah,
And it's running in some part of the world that I don't know about right now. So
right,
yes, but it is a matter of it's a matter of balance. I was very much out of balance. When I look back and take a look at that, I go, that was out of balance. And again, just like with families, you know, we talked about that a few minutes ago. It's like if you're figuring, you can lose joy in what you're doing.
Yeah.
If you're figuring it's all up to you to always know what to do all the time, and you got to figure it out. The weight is always on you, and that's never been a joyful position for me, you know.
No.
And I've seen examples with people and families and stuff where it isn't a joyful position for them.
No. Yeah. They've lost the joy.
That productive work is such a blessing from God.
Yeah.
I think because it's an opportunity to grow and to learn and develop talents and skills that you've been given. And I just think it's a blessing.
It is.
It is. All right. Well, we're at time here. If you guys want to hang on, I'll go ahead and close things out here. As we've been studying Colossians and doing that together, we thank you for joining us. It's Thursday nights, 7 p.m. We're live, and you can send in your questions. We've had some nice hellos on the Slido app, and we've had some interaction on the polls here. So we've enjoyed our time here together, guys, and we hope to see you next week. As always, I'm Locke Morgan with Hansville Community Church.